Shavua Tov, everyone. Welcome to Tillis Tell Stories for Saturday night. The title of this week's video is The Helpful Thief. We translated it from the rendition in the popular Israeli weekly, Sikat HaShavua, which was based on the book Beit Tzadikim Ya'amod. The house of Tzadikim will last, meaning. It was early morning when the police knocked on his door. In front of the stunned faces of his family, the officers arrested him and put him in handcuffs. Before he could open his mouth, he was taken to the police station where he found himself in a holding cell already occupied by criminals. Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Horodok, Vitebsk, a top student of the Maggid of Mezrich, who was the successor to the Baal Shem Tov, had not the slightest idea what crime he could have committed that caused the authorities to arrest him as a lowly criminal. Yet he was extensively interrogated and accused of serious misconduct. Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk, Horodok, was an elder disciple of the Maggid of Mezrich and one of the earliest Hasidic Rabbis. He led the first modern Aliyah to Israel in 1777, about half a century before what in Israel is known as Aliyah Aleph. When he and 300 Hasidim and others settled in Tzfat, Safed, here where I am speaking from, where I live. After a few years, most of the group moved to Tiberias, where he passed away at age 58. His yortzeit on the first day of Iyar, which was today, Shabbat, is an occasion for an enormous pilgrimage to his resting place in the old cemetery of Tiberia, in the section called Students of the Baal Shem Tov. There's different signposts, the different set of groups also. Slowly the situation was clarified somewhat. Someone had invented a false accusation against him and made him out to be a criminal. Rabbi Menachem Mendel tried to convince the interrogators of their mistake. He told them that all the accusations directed at him were nothing more than slander and lies, and that there was no connection between them and reality. His explanations fell on deaf ears. The interrogators wouldn't budge. They continued to pressure him to admit to the grave accusations. When he refused, he was thrown back into the crowded cell. There, on the hard board, surrounded by coarse thugs, Rabbi Menachem Mendel considered the situation. He withdrew within himself and began a self-examination to try and discover the spiritual reason that would explain why he had been thrust into this untenable situation. When it was time for prayer, he went to a corner, faced the wall, closed his eyes, and concentrated deeply on his prayer, ignoring the noise around him and immersing himself in the words in which he found support and consolation. Turning around after finishing his prayers, he noticed one of the other prisoners watching him attentively. At first he ignored the man, but the next time he prayed, he noticed that the other man was still watching him carefully. The prisoner didn't take his eyes off him from the beginning of his prayer until the end. Rabbi Menachem Mendel studied the man, who looked like any other Gentile, just like all the rest of the prisoners. However, soon after, the man approached him, offering him help and concerning himself with Rabbi Menachem Mendel's well-being and comfort. It was obvious that he was going out of his way to be of service to the holy-looking Jew. Also, in the following days, the prisoner sought Rabbi Menachem Mendel's company. He humbly did his utmost to be of service to Rabbi Menachem Mendel, and the latter decided to find out more about this helpful prisoner. It became clear that the man had been waiting for this. With tears running down his cheeks, he began to tell his life story, interrupted again and again by sobs. He was a Jew, and his name was Nachum. Life's hardships dragged him down to crime. He sunk lower and lower till he became a burglar. He would break into houses at night and steal everything he could lay his hands on. For a long time he lived this way, always afraid and every night taking great risks. And then one day he was caught and thrown into jail. None of his Jewish brothers came to his assistance. Quite the opposite. Those who knew him were secretly glad that they finally had got rid of the damage that he caused them. So Nachum found himself alone and deserted in his distress. Rabbi Menachem Mendel listened with great attention to this story. Menachem continued, all of a sudden you arrived, standing there praying, the sight of which touched my heart and started to melt the indifference to my Judaism, to my Jewishness that had surrounded me for so many years. For the first time in my life, I felt true regret for my evil behavior. Please help me find a way of repenting and atoning for my sins. At that moment, a thought crossed Rabbi Menachem Mendel's mind. Right here was the reason why he was incarcerated for a crime he had not committed. A Jewish man whose soul is crying out in misery for help and hoping to be rescued from the pit in which he is trapped. And Rabbi Menachem Mendel decided to dedicate himself entirely to help Menachem. He started teaching him Torah and fear of heaven, and guiding him how to repent and to reject his bad tendencies and to attain a correct way of living. Menachem proved to be a serious and devoted student. He accepted upon himself all the instruction that Rabbi Menachem Mendel gave him. He stopped eating non-kosher food, he put on tefillin every morning, and his awe of God increased daily until he succeeded in transforming himself to a genuine observant Jew. You should know, said his special personal rabbi, that we are still in the beginning of the way. Now God will help. We will be released from imprisonment, and then we will travel together to the Rabbi, meaning the Maggid of Mezrich, and he will show you a complete way of return. While he was still talking to Menachem, the commander of the jail entered to inform Rabbi Menachem Mendel that he is being released. The accusations against him were investigated and proved to be groundless. The interrogators came to the decision that he was innocent. To the amazement of the officer, Rabbi Menachem Mendel, his prisoner, said with finality, I am not leaving here unless my friend Menachem is released as well. The commander thought that he hadn't heard correctly. Never had he come across or even heard of a prisoner who refused to be released. Looking at Menachem, he said, this prisoner hasn't completed his sentence. He can't be released. Rabbi Menachem Mendel did not give in. He demanded to speak to the regional judge. When that was arranged, the rabbi promised him that he would take Menachem under his supervision and see to it that he would not steal any more or harm anyone in any way. The judge was impressed with Rabbi Menachem Mendel's personality and gave instructions to release Menachem immediately. When they arrived at the house of the Maggid of Mezrich, even before they entered, the Maggid said to those surrounding him, for this soul I have waited. Indeed, Menachem changed his life entirely and became a faithful student of the Maggid. Fortunate are those who seek and realize the true significance of strange phenomena that happen to them. Shavua Tov, have an outstanding week.